Hi guys, welcome to God's Got This World. Another gorgeous day. A little cloudy, a little rainy, but God created it all for His purposes, right? I hope you've had a good week. A lot of stuff going on in the world, isn't there? And we live in such exciting times. We really live in exciting times, and we are so blessed to be part of this time. So we're going to get back into reading our word today, and we're in 2 Kings. And last time we were talking about Elijah being raptured up into heaven, and Elijah watching the whole thing. And then the mantle falling on Elijah now. So we're going to continue on with that story in the 3rd chapter today. Grab your coffee, hot chocolate, tea, cookies, chocolates, whatever you got, and let's do it. Let's go. Now Joram, he was the son of Ahab, and he became king of Israel in Jehoshaphat's 18th year as king of Judah. Joram ruled 12 years from Samaria, and he disobeyed the Lord by doing wrong. He tore down the stone image his father had made to honor Baal, and so he wasn't as sinful as his parents, though. But he kept doing the sinful things that Jeroboam, son of Nebat, had led Israel to do. For many years, the country of Moab had been controlled by Israel and was forced to pay taxes to the kings of Israel. And King Mesha of Moab raised sheep. So he paid the king of Israel 100,000 lambs and the wool from 100,000 rams. But soon after the death of Ahab, Mesha rebelled against Israel. And one day Joram left Samaria and called together Israel's army. He sent this message to King Jehoshaphat of Judah: "The king of Moab has rebelled. Will you go with me to attack him?" "Yes, I will," Jehoshaphat answered. "I'm on your side, and my soldiers and horses are at your command. But which way should we go?" "We will march through Edom desert," Joram replied. So Joram, Jehoshaphat, and the king of Edom led their troops out. But 7 days later, there was no drinking water left for them or their animals. Joram cried out, "This is terrible! The Lord must have led us out here to be captured by Moab's army." Jehoshaphat said, "Which of the Lord's prophets is with us? We can find out from him what the Lord wants us to do." So one of Joram's officers answered, "Elisha, the son of Shaphat, is here. He was one of Elijah's closest followers." Jehoshaphat replied, "He can give us the Lord's message." The 3 kings went over to Elijah, and he asked Joram, "Why did you come to me? Go talk to the prophets of the foreign gods your parents worship." "No," Joram answered. "It was the Lord who led us out here so that Moab's army could capture us." Elijah said to him, "I serve the Lord all-powerful, and as surely as he lives, I swear I wouldn't even look at you if I didn't respect King Jehoshaphat." Then Elijah said, "Send for someone who can play the harp." The harpist began playing, and the Lord gave Elijah this message for Joram: "The Lord says that this dry riverbed will be filled with water. You won't feel any wind or see any rain, but there will be plenty of water for you and your animals. That simple thing isn't all the Lord is going to do. He will also help you defeat Moab's army. You will capture all their walled cities and important towns. You will chop down every good tree and stop up every spring of water, and then ruin their fertile fields by covering them with rocks." Well, the next morning, while the sacrifice was being offered, water suddenly started flowing from the direction of Edom, and it flooded the whole land. Meanwhile, the people of Moab had heard that the 3 kings were coming to attack them. They had called together all their fighting men, from the youngest to the oldest, and these troops were now standing at their border, ready for battle. When they got up that morning, the sun was shining across the water, making it look red. The Moabite troops took one look and they shouted, "Look at that blood!" The armies of these kings have fought and killed each other. Come on, let's go take what's left in their camp." But when they arrived at Israel's camp, the Israelite soldiers came out and attacked them until they turned and ran away. And Israel's armies chased them all the way back to Moab, and even there they kept up the attack. The Israelites destroyed the Moabite towns, and then they chopped down the good trees, and they stopped up the springs of water, then covered the fields with rocks. Finally, the only city left standing was Kir-Hasheth. But soldiers armed with slings surrounded it and attacked. King Mesha of Moab saw that he was about to be defeated, so he took along 700 soldiers with swords and tried to break through the front line where the Edomite troops were positioned, but he failed. He then grabbed his oldest son, who was to be the next king, and he sacrificed his own son as an offering on the city wall. The Israelite troops were so horrified that they left the city and they went back home. I don't blame them. Well, one day, the widow of one of the Lord's prophets said to Elijah, "You know that before my husband died, he was a follower of yours and a worshiper of the Lord. But he owed a man some money, and now that man is on his way to take my 2 sons as his slaves." "Maybe there's something I could do to help," Elijah said. "What do you have in your house?" "Sir, I have nothing but a small bottle of olive oil." Elijah told her, "Ask your neighbors for their empty jars, and after you've borrowed as many as you can, go home, shut the door behind you and your sons. Then begin filling the jars with oil and set each one aside as you fill it." And the woman left. Later, when she and her sons were back inside their house, the 2 sons brought her the jars, and she began filling them. At last, she said to one of her sons, "Bring me another jar." "We don't have any more," he answered, and the oil stopped flowing from the small bottle. After she told Elijah what had happened, he said, "Sell the oil and use part of the money to pay what you owe the man. You and your sons can live on what is left." Well, once while Elijah was in the town of Shunem, he met a rich woman who invited him to her home for dinner. After that, whenever he was in Shunem, he would have a meal there with her and her husband. And sometime later, the woman said to her husband, "I'm sure the man who comes here so often is a prophet of God. Why don't we build him a small room on the flat roof of our house? We can put a bed, a table and chair, and an old oil lamp in it. Then whenever he comes, he can stay with us." What hospitality, eh? The next time Elijah was in Shunem, he stopped at their house and he went up to his room to rest. He said to his servant Gehazi, "This woman has been very helpful. Have her come up here to the roof for a moment." Well, she came, and Elijah told Gehazi to say to her, "You've gone to a lot of trouble for us, and we want to help you. Is there something we can request the king or army commander to do?" The woman answered, "With my relatives nearby, I have everything I need." "Then what can we do for her?" Elijah asked Gehazi. Gehazi replied, "I do know that her husband is old and that she doesn't have a son." "Ask her to come here again," Elijah told his servant. He called for her. She came and stood in the doorway of Elijah's room. Elijah said to her, "Next year at this time, you'll be holding your own baby son in your arms." "You're a man of God," the woman replied. "Please don't lie to me." But a few months later, the woman got pregnant, and she gave birth to a son, just as Elijah had promised. And one day, while the boy was still young, he was out in the fields with his father, where the workers were harvesting the crops. And suddenly he shouted, "My head hurts, it hurts a lot." "Carry him back to his mother," the father said to a servant. The servant picked up the boy, carried him to his mother, and the boy lay on her lap all morning, and by noon he was dead. She carried him upstairs to Elijah's room, and she laid him across the bed, and then she walked out and shut the door behind her. The woman called to her husband, "I need to see the prophet. Let me use one of the donkeys. Send a servant along with me and let me leave now so I can get back quickly." "Why do you need to see him today?" her husband asked. It's not the Sabbath or time for the new moon festival. That's all right, she answered. I don't care. She saddled the donkey and she said to her servant, let's go, and don't slow down unless I tell you to. And she left at once for Mount Carmel to talk with Elijah. When Elijah saw her coming, he said, Gehazi, look, it's a woman from Shunem. Run and meet her and ask her if everything is all right with her and her family. Everything is fine, she answered Gehazi, but as soon as she got to the top of the mountain, she went over and grabbed Elijah by the feet. Gehazi started forward toward her to push her away when Elijah said, leave her alone. Don't you see how sad she is? But the Lord has not told me why. The woman said, sir, I begged you not to get my hopes up, and I didn't even ask you for a son. Gehazi, get ready and go to her house, Elijah said. Take along my walking stick, and when you get there, lay it on the boy's face. Don't stop to talk to anyone, even if they try to talk to you. But the boy's mother said to Elijah, I swear by the living Lord and by your own life that I won't leave without you. So Elijah got up and went with them. Now Gehazi ran on ahead, and he laid Elijah's walking stick on the boy's face. But the boy didn't move or make a sound. Gehazi ran back to Elijah and said, the boy didn't wake up. Elijah arrived at the woman's house, and he went straight to his room, where he saw the boy's body on his bed. He walked in, shut the door, and he prayed to the Lord. Then he got on the bed, and he stretched out over the dead body with his mouth on the boy's mouth, his eyes on his eyes, and his hands on his hands. As he lay there, the boy's body became warm. Elijah got up and walked back and forth in the room, and then he went back and leaned over the boy's body. The boy sneezed 7 times and opened his eyes. Elisha called out to Gehazi, have the boy's mother come up here. Gehazi did, and when she was at the door, Elijah said, you can take your son now. She came in and bowed down at Elijah's feet. Then she picked up her son and left. Oh my goodness, the Lord is so good. He brought life back to this young boy. He was so good to this woman. God hears our prayers, and he answers our prayers. And he's such a good God. Such a good God. Later, Elijah went back to Gilgal, where there was almost nothing to eat because the crops had failed. And one day, while the prophets who lived there were meeting with Elijah, he said to his servants, fix a big pot of stew for these prophets. And one of them went out into the woods to gather some herbs. And he found a wild vine and picked as much of its fruit as he could carry. But he didn't know that the fruit was very sour. When he got back, he cut up the fruit and he put it in the stew. The stew was served, and when the prophets started eating it, they shouted, Elijah, the stew tastes terrible. We can't eat it. Bring me some flour, Elijah said. He sprinkled the flour in the stew, and he said, now serve it to them. And the stew tasted fine. A man from the town of Baalahish brought Elijah some freshly cut grain and 20 loaves of bread made from the first barley that was harvested. And Elijah said, give it to the people so they can eat. There's not enough here for 100 people, his servant said. Just give it to them, Elijah replied. The Lord has promised there will be more than enough. So the servant served the bread and grain to the people. They ate and still had some left over, just as the Lord had promised. And where do we read that again in the Bible, with the Messiah coming and feeding the loaves and the fishes to the people? And there wasn't enough. And the Messiah prayed, and all of a sudden everyone had fishes and bread, and they gathered, I think it was 12 baskets left over. God knows how to feed his people. Now Naaman was a commander of the Syrian army, and the Lord had helped him and his troops defeat their enemies. So the king of Syria respected Naaman very much. And Naaman was a brave soldier, but he had leprosy. One day while the Syrian troops were raiding Israel, they captured a girl, and she became a servant of Naaman's wife. And sometime later the girl said, if your husband Naaman would go to the prophet in Samaria, Elijah, he would be cured of his leprosy. When Naaman told the king what the girl had said, the king replied, "Go ahead. I will give you a letter to take to the king of Israel." Naaman left, and he took along 750 pounds of silver, 150 pounds of gold, and 10 new outfits. He also carried the letter to the king of Israel, and it said, "I am sending my servant Naaman to you. Would you cure him of his leprosy?" Well, when the king of Israel read the letter, he tore his clothes in fear, and he shouted, "That Syrian king believes I can cure this man of leprosy. Does he think I'm God with power over life and death? He must be trying to pick a fight with me." As soon as Elijah the prophet heard what had happened, he sent the Israelite king this message: "Why are you so afraid? Send the man to me so that he will know there is a prophet in Israel." Naaman left with his horses and chariots, and he stopped at the door of Elijah's house. And Elijah sent someone outside to say to him, "Go wash 7 times in the Jordan River. Then you'll be completely cured." There's that 7 again. But Naaman stormed off, grumbling. "Why couldn't he come out and talk to me? I thought for sure he would stand in front of me and pray to the Lord his God, then wave his hand over my skin and cure me. What about the Abana River or the Pharpar River? These rivers in Damascus are just as good as any river in Israel. I could have washed in them and been cured." His servants went over to him and said, "Sir, if the prophet had told you to do something difficult, you would have done it. So why don't you do what he said? Go wash and be cured." Well, Naaman walked down to the Jordan River. He waded out into the water. He stooped down in it 7 times, just as Elijah had told him. Right away, he was cured, and his skin became as smooth as a child. Naaman and his officials went back to Elijah, and Naaman stood in front of him and announced, "Now I know that the God of Israel is the only God in the whole world. Sir, would you please accept a gift from me?" "I am a servant of the living God," Elijah answered, "and I swear that I will not take anything from you." Naaman kept begging, but Elijah kept refusing. Finally, Naaman said, "If you won't accept a gift, then please let me take home as much soil as 2 mules can pull in a wagon. Sir, from now on I will offer sacrifices only to the Lord. But I pray that the Lord will forgive me when I go into the temple of the god Rimmon and bow down there with the king of Syria." "Go on home. Don't worry about that," Elijah replied, and then Naaman left. And leprosy was used for many kinds of different skin issues. It wasn't just leprosy itself. Well, after Naaman had gone only a short distance, Gehazi said to himself, "Elijah let that Syrian off too easy. He should have taken Naaman's gift. I swear by the living God that I will talk to Naaman myself and get something from him." So he hurried after Naaman. When Naaman saw Gehazi running after him, he got out of his chariot to meet him, and Naaman asked, "Is everything all right?" "Yes," Gehazi answered, "but my master sent me to tell you about 2 young prophets from the hills of Ephraim. They came asking for help, and now Elijah wants to know if you would give them about 75 pounds of silver and some new clothes." Oh boy, there's a lie. "Sure," Naaman replied, "but why don't you take twice that amount of silver?" He convinced Gehazi to take it all. Then he put the silver in the 2 bags. He handed the bags and the clothes to his 2 servants, and they carried them for Gehazi. When they reached the hill where Gehazi lived, he took the bags from the servants, and he placed them in his house, and then he sent the men away. And after they had gone, Gehazi went in and stood in front of Elijah, who asked, "Gehazi, where have you been?" "Nowhere, sir," Gehazi answered. Elijah asked, "Don't you know that my spirit was there when Naaman got out of his chariot to talk with you?" "Gehazi, you have no right to accept money or clothes, olive orchards or vineyards, sheep, cattle, or servants, because of what you've done. Naaman's leprosy will now be on you and your descendants forever." Suddenly, Gehazi's skin became white with leprosy, and he left. Oh my goodness. There's always a consequence for sin, isn't there? Even though we don't see it right away sometimes, there's always a consequence. And Gehazi got greedy, and he paid for it with leprosy or some sort of skin disease. Well, one day the prophet said to Elijah, "The place where we meet with you is too small. Why don't we build a new meeting place near the Jordan River? Each of us could get some wood, then we could build it." "That's a good idea," Elijah replied. "Get started." "Aren't you going with us?" one of the prophet asked. "Yes, I'll go," Elijah answered, and he left with them. So they went to the Jordan River and they began chopping down trees. And while one of the prophets was working, his axe head fell off and dropped into the water. "Oh," he shouted, "Sir, I borrowed this axe." "Where did it fall in?" Elijah asked. The prophet pointed to the place, and Elijah cut a stick and he threw it into the water at that spot. The axe head floated to the top of the water. "Now get it," Elijah told him, and the prophet reached in and grabbed it. Another miracle. Time after time, when the king of Syria was at war against the Israelites, he met with his officers and he announced, "I've decided where we will set up camp." Each time Elijah would send this warning to the king of Israel, "Don't go near there. That's where the Syrian troops have set up camp." So the king would warn the Israelite troops in that place to be on guard. The king of Syria was furious when he found out what was happening. He called in his officers and he asked, "Which one of you been telling the king of Israel our plans?" "None of us, your majesty," one of them answered. "It's an Israelite named Elisha. He's a prophet, so he can tell his king everything, even what you say in your own room." "Find out where he is," the king ordered. "I'll send soldiers to bring him here." They learned that Elisha was in the town of Dothan and reported it to the king, and he ordered his best troops to go there with horses and chariots. They marched out during the night and they surrounded that town. When Elijah's servant got up the next morning, he saw that Syrian troops had the town surrounded. "Sir, what are we going to do?" he asked. "Don't be afraid," Elijah answered. "There are more troops on our side than on theirs." And then he prayed, "Lord, please help him to see." And the Lord let the servant see that the hill was covered with fiery horses, flaming chariots all around Elijah. And as the Syrian armor came closer, Elijah prayed, "Lord, make those soldiers blind." And the Lord blinded them with a bright light. Elijah told the enemy troops, "You've taken the wrong road and are in the wrong town. Follow me. I'll lead you to the man you're looking for." So Elijah led them straight to the capital city of Samaria. And when all the soldiers were inside the city, Elijah prayed, "Lord, now let them see again." The Lord let them see that they were standing in the middle of Samaria. The king of Israel saw them and he asked Elijah, "Should I kill them, sir?" "No," Elijah answered. "You don't capture these troops in battle. You didn't. So you have no right to kill them. Instead, give them something to eat and drink and let them return to their leader." The king ordered a huge meal to be prepared for Syria's army, and when they finished eating, he let them go. And for a while, the Syrian troops stopped invading Israel's territory. Well, some time later, King Benhadad of Syria called his entire army together, and then they marched to Samaria and attacked. They kept up the attack until there was nothing to eat in the city. In fact, a donkey's head cost about 2 pounds of silver, and a small bowl of pigeon droppings cost about 2 ounces of silver. Ew! One day, as the king of Israel was walking along the top of the city wall, a woman shouted to him, "Please, your majesty, help me." "Let the Lord help you," the king said. "Do you think I have grain or wine to give you?" Then he asked, "What's the matter anyways?" The woman answered, "Another woman and I were so hungry that we agreed to eat our sons. She said if we ate my son one day, we could eat hers the next. So yesterday we cooked my son and ate him." Double ooh. My goodness. "But today, when I went to her house to eat her son, she had hidden him." The king tore off his clothes in sorrow, and since he was on top of the city wall, the people saw that he was wearing sackcloth underneath. And he said, I pray that God will punish me terribly if Elijah's head is still on his shoulders by this time tomorrow. Then he sent a messenger to Elijah. Well, Elijah was home at the time, and the important leaders of Israel were meeting with him. And even before the king's messenger arrived, Elijah told the leaders, that murderer is sending someone to cut off my head. When you see him coming, shut the door and don't let him in. I'm sure the king himself will be right behind him. Before Elijah finished talking, the messenger came up and said, the Lord has made all these terrible things happen to us. Why should I think he will help us now? Elijah answered, I have a message for you. The Lord promises that tomorrow, here in Samaria, you will be able to buy a large sack of flour or 2 large sacks of barley for almost nothing. The chief officer there with the king replied, I don't believe it. Even if the Lord sent a rainstorm, it couldn't produce that much grain by tomorrow. You will see it happen, but you won't eat any of the food, Elijah warned him. Wow, 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 wow. We're going to stop there. What a prophet, Elijah. What a God. He did amazing miracles all the people could see. Our God is so, so good. So, so good. This is writing where I'm going to start next time. Oh my goodness. It gives me such hope, such encouragement. Doesn't that do that for you? When we read the word, when we read the miracles that God did, knowing that he's such an all-powerful God, that nothing's impossible for him to do? Absolutely nothing. He can heal you of your diseases. He can see what you're doing behind closed doors. He knows. He knows it all. He can send enemy troops away and make them blind. Oh, Lord. So if you don't know him, if you don't know God, and you want a personal relationship with him, because that's what we all need. We really need a personal relationship with the Messiah, because there's no one else or nothing else that can help us, as you can read in the scriptures, but him. He is all-powerful. So please ask him to come into your life today. Repeat after me this prayer. Father God, I love reading your word, and I get so much enjoyment and so much encouragement from it. I don't know you, Father, but I desire to know you. I want this help in my life that you gave the prophet Elijah. So I ask you right now, Father, come into my life. Show me what to do. Show me where to go. Lead my life, Father. Lead me. Forgive me my sins, past, present, and future. Forgive me. Heal my diseases, Lord. Help with my finances. Repair all my relationships. You are a mighty God, a mighty, holy God. And I desire to spend the rest of my days following you. Amen. So if you've done that today, comment down below. You've now joined with God's people. And the angels this very day are rejoicing because you have accepted him. Oh, Father. Well, go and have a good rest of your week. Have a great weekend. Remember to look to the Lord in all things and follow him, because he knows the way you should go. Don't trust in your own ideas and your own thoughts. Trust in the Heavenly Father above. Listen for his voice. He will speak to you. He will guide you. Trust in him in all things. Love you guys. Have a great rest of your days until he returns. And I'll see you on the next one. Be blessed. Shabbat shalom. Take care.